Why did you double down on community? Like, why was that such an important thing for you?
I have reflected on this over the past couple of years, and a big part of it is based in like my early childhood. So I had a big tragedy when I was younger, where when I was, well, first of all, I went to boarding school from the age of 8, and for anyone who hasn't been to boarding school, it's a pretty cutthroat environment. It's like super privileged, and like I recognize that, and I'm super grateful for it. But at the same time, from a very young age, you're a number in a sea of people, and you're competing to be recognized. And then also the crucial part of that is you don't have those sort of really strong connections to parental figures because you're at school and you're at school for 2/3 of the year. So anytime you have a problem, it's like, cool, almost internalize it and just deal with it yourself. Then the first year into school, my dad very sadly passed away in a freak accident where he was at dinner and fell off a balcony. And that was obviously super pivotal. And then there was like a really clear lack of connection there. And so then I sort of went through teenage years, felt relatively like lonely, didn't really understand myself, didn't really find my people. I've kept one friend from like one really good friend for my entire schooling years. Wow. So then really like came into myself, found myself after school. And so then that was like the foundation for like really wanting connection and like feeling like I missed it. And then when I started Click and there was like that first group of people and that like Zoom call where I brought together lots of like my closest friends all within startup world. And there was just this electricity. There was this magic, which was like, whoa, there's something really magical here. And exactly the same happened when I turned up to my first ever Foundrs retreat. And that was just like sparks flying. It was just this aha moment where the light bulb comes on. You're like, wow, this is pure magic. And then I was just like hooked. I was so hooked. So
yeah, it's a thing that's like, I think more, it's like larger in the US, I would say, like the like different communities. In the UK, it's not as prevalent, I would say, but they are definitely growing. And I completely agree with you. I was in those sessions, and when you're around people that are trying to solve problems and so like all sort of like thinking in the same sort of way as you do and like challenging you as well, and like, but it's a safe space where you can challenge with no sort of emotion there. It's a very welcoming space, and you feel like you are with like people that understand you. And as an entrepreneur, it is a fairly lonely journey. It's not, people don't really talk about it. I've talked about it a few times, because when you're trying to run a business, your team always looks to you for direction, but who do you look for direction?
Exactly.
And you can't really go to your team because, well, they're looking to you. So it's like, okay, who do you look for? And it's most of the time you look to yourself of like, where do I go? So that's why it can be a very lonely journey. So being around these sort of people, it's more of a therapy more than anything.
100%. And actually, to build on that, it's not just you can't go to your team. You also can't go to your investors because you have to put on a mask for them if you have them. And then also friends and family who aren't in the startup space just don't get it. Like, they're like, why?
They can be really supportive, of course, but they won't understand.
They won't ever understand. Like, why do you put yourself through so much pain, so much pressure? Like, why not?
I ask myself that all the time.
Yeah,
exactly. It's just facts. Like, why am I doing this? Like,
100%. And so, it's a super lonely journey. And that is also like part of the magic of Foundrs and part of the magic of what Click was, is that when people turn up and they haven't had that support group, and then suddenly they're like, wow, everyone here, A, thinks similarly to me or has like aligned values, B, is going through the same sort of stress and pressures and struggles that I am, and C, is very non-judgmental, low ego, lovely people. That is just a beautiful combination.
So for people listening, I guess like so you talk about kind of the value of community, but I guess like, how do you find that community essentially? Because like there's obviously entrepreneurs that are listening to this, different stages. It can be an intimidating thing to try to find different groups of people, and you feel like, yeah, they might not accept me or whatever. So I guess like for people listening, how do they find that group?
That is a great question, and I don't have a good answer for it. My solution was to build it myself. And it just happened through serendipity that I met Nick and I met Peter, and they introduced me to Foundrs. And Foundrs currently works where it's invite only, because the whole focus is around a really strong, trusting community of people. And part of that is value alignment. That's the most important thing. And so therefore you have to be referred by an existing member to join. And so I'd say the easiest way is to ask people that you already know, value highly, and probably have a network within the space themselves. Every entrepreneur is bound to know other entrepreneurs, and they'll know other entrepreneurs as well. And so I think that's probably the surefire way. It's not a great answer, but I think that's how it worked out for me.
A lot of people go into those sort of communities with the whole ambition to try to like sell business as well. I've seen that, and it's, I guess, like in terms of like your mindset, how should you kind of be looking at these different communities? Because I've been in them where it just feels very salesy. Feels a bit like a pyramid scheme, like people just like selling memberships and
it's I have quite a strongly held opinion on this, which is relationships shouldn't be transactional. This is the beauty of Foundrs, that it's a pure community just for community's sake. It's not a business who's running a community such that they can then get clients and sell products or services. And then also it's all just about giving and supporting one another, as opposed to trying to take. And the paradox is the more you give, the more you then receive back as well. However, the intention going into it, I've found, should never be, I'm trying to get something out of this. Instead, it's how can I help other people? How can I share my experiences? How can I connect other people and just contribute to the overall community experience? That's when people get the most out of it. But yes, luckily within Foundrs, we have like a really strongly held culture, and like no sales, no egos is a big part of it.
So when because you talked about like business communities versus personal communities, like I don't want to take people down the wrong path of like building a business community, because they're different things, right?
Yeah.
Like building a business community and building a personal community. So I guess like what's the difference between the two, and what's the value of either?
Sure. So here's not to say that business focused or business led communities aren't also super valuable. They are super valuable. It depends on what you're trying to get from it, which is ironic because we just spoke about giving rather than trying to get from it. But if you're looking more for like deep personal connections, then a pure community just for the community's sake is probably going to be more valuable to you. However, like community-led growth has been buzzwords of the past couple of years, and businesses have really invested into it, and they're also super helpful. And someone to look up is called David Spinks. He has a model called the Spaces model, which talks about the different potential outcomes that you can get from community. And so most of them are focused towards businesses. However, it does then, I feel conflicted because it then does bring in that sort of transactional relationship. It's, I think, a really exciting opportunity lies in how can you have a business-led community which still has that sort of like purity of intention of the organizers and then members, which is really tough. And I think that's a really exciting challenge that I'm excited to dig into.
So you've been